So I just finished The Last of Us Season 2, and I really wish I could say that they delivered. As someone who loved the game, especially with Ellie's story, I was really hoping for something amazing out of this. However, this season felt like a completely different story, just using the names of these characters. The characters acted out of place, emotional payoffs just didn't work, and worst of all, the showrunners clearly didn't understand the core material of what made the game so impactful. In this video, we'll be breaking down exactly what went wrong with The Last of Us Season 2, from the bizarre storytelling decisions, weak character arcs, and the quotes directly from the showrunner that reveal that they clearly did not understand Ellie's grief, strength, or growth. So the first part of this video is going to be us talking about the storytelling and structure issues. So in the game, the way the game starts off when you're starting to play, first of all, it shows us Joel telling Tommy about what happened at the Firefly Hospital, which we don't see in the show, which I don't think is a terrible way to start the season. I think the way they started it was fine with them picking up with Ellie rather than doing that scene first. We also see the Qatar gift and Future Days with Joel at the start of the game, which we do get eventually, but we do get that later in a flashback in the show. But then when we do eventually get to Ellie and DINA, we have them going on a patrol together. And you kind of start getting details about what's going on. They're setting up Joel and Ellie's conflict, that something's been going on, having this mystery for the audience to kind of question, what happened since the first game that made them so distant from each other. Like a great moment to really show that something is going on, adding mystery, making you kind of question stuff, makes you more intrigued to the story so you can figure out what's really going on. But in the show, they front load Abby's motivation, removing the mystery and tension about this character that we don't know who it is, and we play for the first time as she's running away from infected before she runs into Joel and Tommy. And you play her and you're like, okay, who is this new character? Who are we playing as? It's kind of a cool mystery, trying to question what's really going on. You don't know why this person's here. You don't know what they're doing. But in the show, they explain everything. They explain that she's going after Joel, where she wants to kill him for what she did to her father and the people at the hospital. And that's the one thing they did in this season a lot of. They just front loaded all this information to just explain their motivations. And I will say, even though I wasn't a big fan of them showing that motivation right at the start of the season, like right away, and not leaving it up to mystery, I do like Caitlin Dever's performance. She did an absolutely fantastic job with what she was given, and I think she's a great actress. And honestly, from her few scenes throughout this entire season, it makes me want to watch season 3 just for her. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with her, and I'm probably going to watch more projects with her in it now because she's so great. Even if she's not that jacked Abby from the game, I really like her, and even though I'm disappointed we're not going to see that really buff Abby, I am looking forward to seeing what Caitlin Dever brings to the table. Now, another major issue with this show was the fact that they had a lot of pacing that was just very inconsistent, with some of the emotional moments being extremely rushed, while other irrelevant scenes kind of dragged. Like the scenes with Gale. I like the first one where we got to learn more about Joel's trauma, what he's going through, learning more about Ellie and his fight, and why they were so distant from each other. Like, I like seeing that because it's just giving us an idea of what's going on. It makes you question what happened between the two and you want to know more. So I like that scene. And also set up like the Eugene question, like what did he do to Eugene? And I like that kind of story point there. However, I feel like the later Gale stories really dragged a bit, especially the one with her and Tommy after Joel's death, where she talks to Tommy about how Ellie and Joel are side by side. She paints both of them as like really violent people who want and need to be violent. And I wasn't a huge fan of that, because it's not really who they are. Even though Ellie is violent, it's mostly because she was raised in this apocalypse. She has to know how to survive, and there is this need to be able to do that. But they picture them more as like monsters, which I wasn't a big fan of, because that's not exactly who they are. Even though Joel can be, and he has been because of some of the stuff he's done, I just didn't like how they put that in there. But mostly because it felt like an unnecessary scene, because they just didn't send Tommy with Ellie and they just kept him there. It was just trying to add more to him kind of wondering what's going on and trying to help figure out what to do with Ellie. And then there's that dance scene that was put very early on in the show. Now, this is one of those scenes where I didn't mind the change, mostly because it's something that you find out like almost near the end of the game. It's something that you have to wait forever to find out what happened that night with Joel and Ellie. And it also sets up Ellie and Dina's relationship. Like, it's something that they kind of tease throughout the story, but they didn't reveal until way later on. And I do like it having it early in the beginning, because it just kind of sets up stuff for a TV watcher, chronological, it's easier to follow, and I think that worked well for it. And also, I just liked seeing Seth get thrown to the ground. So I will say that's one of those pacing things that weren't as big of an issue, and I think worked out well for the show. But honestly, a lot of the pacing issues started to come out after the first few episodes of the show, where they started just teleporting everywhere. We didn't get a lot of exploring. And like I said before, one of the major issues for this show was the fact that they had to literally shove all the information in your face, treating the audience as they're like stupid. Like they had to explain everyone's motivation. They had to like explain everything with just heavy dialogue exposition, rather than subtly doing it, showing it by actions. They just kind of shoved everything down your throat to make you like, oh, this is what's happening. This, I have to write it in every single detail. And that was something I just wasn't a fan of. They had to spell it out. I don't think they needed to spell out every single thing. Like the amount of times they explained Abby's motivations was ridiculous. They said it maybe like 4 or 5 times in so many different scenes. It's like, okay, we get it. We know what Abby's motivations are. You don't have to keep explaining it to us, and you don't have to explain it to the character. Some of the characters could be out of the loop, not knowing what's going on, other than these people killed Joel, and that's what they did. Now you want to go after them. And maybe in a big shocking reveal at the end, when Abby's about to shoot him, oh, this is why I'm after you guys. Like something like that. I wasn't a big fan of the changes. I feel like they just explained way too much, rather than letting you figure it out for yourself. And, you know, being able to think and understand what's going on as you're watching this piece of media. Now, the second part we're going to talk about is Ellie's character getting absolutely butchered. Now, this is the thing that really made me disappointed with the season. Like, I could have probably let go of a lot of the stuff they changed if it wasn't for this one specific character, your main character. Because in the game, Ellie is smart, she's strategic, she's capable, she's emotionally complex, and she's a hardened survivor with depth. Because in the game, even without you having the gameplay, Ellie's able to survive. She grew up in the apocalypse. She knows what she's doing. And she's had to fight for herself. And even in the first episode, we see her fighting a guy, training with Jesse. And then they completely forget about that scene. They don't use anything for that for the rest of the season. They have her fighting literally no one. And it's extremely disappointing. Because in the show, they made her more of like passive, constantly acting like a child. Like she didn't age at all from the first season. And they often sidelined her in her own journey. Like they focused on DINA a lot in this show, which I don't mind. But they pushed Ellie to the side and gave some of those motivations to DINA rather than her, which was very annoying. Why can't they both have those motivations? I like the fact that Joel and DINA had a little bit of a scene in the first part of the show, just in the first episode, just to set up, like, you know, they're friends, you know, understands it. It makes kind of Ellie and DINA's bond a little closer, and also DINA's reason for going, other than just helping her friend, also just motivates her as well, which I thought was a good job. I wasn't a fan of her being there for Joel's death, mostly because I feel like Tommy should have been there, like this game did, to have Tommy go on his revenge path as well, and make it feel like a brother going to get vengeance for his brother, but I digress. And the thing is as well, Craig Mazin, the freaking showrunner writer of the show, literally said that Ellie acts like a child and a grunt, completely mistaking her arc from both games. Like, this character is not just a child. She grew up in the apocalypse. She feels older because of it. She had to grow up sooner to understand what's going on in this apocalypse and survive. And the thing is, just making her feel like a child and a grunt really takes away her characterization. They really took out what made Ellie Ellie. And that was my biggest problem with this. Like, even with the scenes with them in the theater, we have Ellie making the dumbest quips that she would never make. First of all, I'm a dad. I'm going to be annoyed by that. It's such a bad joke, and it just does not fit the situation whatsoever. And then having her go around and talk about, like, the generator and being very charismatic on their journey rather than being focused on revenge and being that person that wants to go after the people that killed Joel was disappointing, because that's not who the character is. And people are like, well, it's an adaptation, it's not going to be exact. Yeah, I understand that. But when you take a key part of a character and their story out of the story, is it really a proper adaptation anymore? Or are you just making a completely different story by using the names of these characters? And in that theater scene as well, we have DINA being the smart one. She's the one triangulating the maps, doing all this stuff. And Ellie acting like an idiot, like she doesn't know what she's doing. When this girl literally survived in this apocalypse beforehand. She should have known some of that stuff. Like, yeah, you could have them bounce off one another and, you know, make them both smart. You don't have to make one an idiot and one a genius. It's just very disappointing to see what they did. Even though in the game, you do have DINA doing the maps and stuff, but Ellie doesn't come up acting like a dumbass, not knowing how to do stuff. And it's just one of those things that really bothered me, because it didn't feel like Ellie is a character, like, properly. Like, even with the scenes with the soccer warehouse, DINA had to explain the survival skills to Ellie, undermining Ellie's literally established competence. We've seen her be smart. We've seen her survive with Joel when she was a child, but now she acts like she's oblivious and doesn't know how to deal with stuff. It's just very disappointing. Because on top of all that, Ellie's rage arc in this feels hollow, especially with scenes like the Nora hospital scene and the aftermath of that. In the game, these scenes are devastating and grounded because you have her you see that rage. Like, from the very beginning, when she sneaks into the hospital and she's going after Nora, you hear her yelling. It's like this fueled rage of her wanting to take Nora down, especially when Nora said that Joel deserved to die. Like, this just shows the peak rage of Ellie's coming out, and now she's getting so close to her goal that just all the emotions are coming out as well. And you could see it in the character's model's face so much more than with Bella Ramsey. Even though I will say, when they were doing that scene, they did a great job. Mostly because even though I didn't have that anger in her face, that dead stare of like, I'm pissed, like she kind of lost in the madness, kind of worked for that moment. And I think that's like the first time we really saw Ellie's rage other than episode 2 where she said, I'm gonna kill you, when they were killing Joel. So it's like really interesting to see how they did this, because they could have literally had that throughout the entire few episodes beforehand and not just in that moment. So I'm very disappointed that she didn't really have a proper rage arc, and they only had it like one episode, and then afterwards when we got to the aquarium, she just looked terrified to do things, and she still didn't have that anger. She was scared in the game, don't get me wrong. After the Nora situation, she was traumatized, but I feel like they just didn't utilize the rage and need for revenge as much as they should have throughout this. Even though she did show it with Jesse when she was yelling at him, like, I'm like, finally, there's that rage. Why can't we have more of this? Why is there only like very little scenes throughout the entire show showing that, when that's supposed to be her whole journey? And I feel like the emotional range in this as well was very limited. Like, Ellie's numb reactions to Nora's death, she's just staring there with a dead stare, like she enjoyed killing her, rather than what happened in the game where she's devastated, she's traumatized. She doesn't say a lot, but you can see it in the emotions in her face that she's absolutely like scared out of her mind of what she just did. Kind of showing that, you know, maybe going around killing people with pipes is not something for her. Like, she did something wrong and she knows she did, and now she has to live with that for the rest of her life. Where in the show, they make it more like she's a field monster. She's like, it was easy. But at the same time, she has this very dead stare. Like, there's no emotion. And it's just like, why would you take that out? I feel like Bella Ramsey can't do that. They can't show that emotion, so why didn't they? And it's just a directing choice. They decide to do it that way, and it's just honestly extremely disappointing for me, who love the game and love seeing that emotion just not be presented well in the show. Now, part 3 of this video is going to be talking about DINA taking over. Mostly because DINA became the leader, often explaining everything to Ellie. Like I said before, like, Dina's the one who had to explain to Ellie why she had to be angry about Joel's death. Like, you know, it could be seen as her trying to relate to Ellie, like why she should be angry, but the way they kind of wrote the scene seemed like DINA was saying, you should be angry. You should be trying to get revenge. Why can't Ellie be like that? Why can't Ellie be like that? She shouldn't be all happy-go-lucky, having fun. I just wanted to see angry Ellie. I just wanted to see that emotion come out. But 90% of the time, it wasn't there. And the thing is, in the game, too, they were more like equals, at least for the first little bit. They were working together emotionally and tactically. Like, they were bouncing off one another, and it didn't feel forced, and the relationship felt more like they were trying to protect each other while also loving each other, rather than all lovey-dovey vacation time in Seattle. In the game, Ellie was that more warrior leading the fight. That's who she was. And the only time DINA was put to the sideline was after she found out she was pregnant. At the same time, she also ended up getting sick that sidelined her for the rest of the game, until they got out of Seattle. So, like, they set up all this stuff in the game to have DINA as this character. She wasn't always around, but then with the show, even though I liked seeing more DINA because I like her character, they just really mischaracterized both of them together. I think they could have still kept DINA, what they did in the show, kind of pushed her and elevated her up to be more of that leader with Ellie, but they should have still had Ellie there, being competent, understanding things, and not having DINA be the one that's smarter than her. I even saw somewhere that Craig Mazin said that they set up that DINA was the parent figure. Like, why? You don't need a parent figure. Like, this, Ellie's a grown adult. She doesn't have to be like that. And I heard that, and I was like, that sounds so dumb. But I can also see what they were doing, because you could literally see it in the show where DINA was acting as that parent watching over Ellie, and it was so annoying. Don't get me wrong, I still love Isabel Merced. I think she did a great job. And I think most of her lines were fantastic. Her acting, great. I just didn't like how they kept putting Ellie as like a child rather than being a grown adult. And one of my friends gave me a line that I actually 100% agree with, where Ellie feels more like a burden and not a protagonist. Because they elevated DINA so many times in these moments, it just felt like Ellie wasn't the main character anymore and DINA was. And I've seen a lot of people talking about this, and after watching the show, I can kind of see that now. And I don't know why they chose to do this whatsoever. However, it wasn't all bad. I really liked how they expanded on DINA's backstory while she's talking to Ellie, finding out more about what happened to her family, how they were killed, and she followed the guy and took him out herself. Like, we got a little bit of that in the game, but this added more to it. Kind of explaining the situation in a different way, but also having her understand the rage for wanting to go after Abby because of her family. If the guy got away, she would have went to the ends of the earth to track him down and take him out for what he did. Now, I don't like how she had to explain that to Ellie to kind of make Ellie realize she has to do that to Abby. I just wish they kept it that way. Because I feel like, after episode 2, when Joel died, Ellie was ready to go get her revenge. She was going out there, but she didn't really understand how to survive, which was, again, an annoying part. Like, we said this a bunch of times. And then when they went out there, as they got through Seattle, instead of Ellie continuing that mindset of wanting to get revenge, it kind of drifted to this lovey-dovey vacation in a way. I just don't understand. Honestly, that's where it's also very inconsistent, where they bounce around, where it's like, okay, we're mad, vacation. We're mad, vacation. And it just doesn't work. And I will say, the relationship at times also felt unbalanced, especially in the stalker warehouse scene. Dina's giving the directions, telling Ellie what to do before they meet the stalkers, like being that leader rather than them working together. And then I will say, Ellie finally took charge when it came to the stalkers. Even though it didn't play out at all well, and they could have written it so much better, I don't know, they just didn't make that scene work. Stalkers at first, horrifying, awesome, I really liked that part. However, the only part I hated from that scene was Ellie just being like, I can take a lot of bites, and then getting jumped by all the stalkers. Rather than showing her have good aim and be like a badass, they just made her feel weak and let her get jumped on. Like, maybe she got jumped by one. And then they just had Jesse be that savior coming in. I don't think they should have done that. I think they should have had Ellie be the savior. Ellie finally show her competence and being able to take on the bad guys, take on the infected and deal with it while also protecting Dina. I think that would have been a great thing, because that would have also given her a moment to be like, Dina, you need to stay at the theater. I can't deal with this with you here. Otherwise, you're going to die and you're going to lose your baby. Like, they could have done that. But instead, they chose to make Jesse the savior, which I still don't like how he just appeared out of nowhere. But as we move forward, the next part is Tommy's lost motivation, because they completely changed his arc from the game. Because in the game, Tommy leaves first. After Ellie goes to see him and says she's going to go on this journey to get revenge for Joel, Tommy decides to leave first in order to protect her, to make Maria keep her there so that she doesn't get hurt or get put in danger for what this revenge quest is going to do. Tommy is driven by his grief and need for justice as well, and it's really interesting to see in the game how he does this. He's the one that gets there first, and he leaves a trail of bodies. It's like this very cool moment to kind of make you wonder what's going on with Tommy, which means they could have given us scenes in the season showing us Tommy's path while cutting in between him and Ellie. Rather than seeing some of the scenes with the wolves and the scars or having a lower runtime for their episodes, we could have added extra scenes in to show us Tommy taking out some of the wolves by himself, giving us some badass moments of him trying to figure out where Abby is and go there until we get to the Abby portion of things where we'll see some of those moments. But I wish they kind of kept that in. And the thing is, the reason Tommy was also driven by this justice and wanting to go after Abby was because he was there when Joel died. He had the grief of not being able to stop them from killing his brother. And I really wish they had that in there, because it's very important for his character. Where instead they gave it to Dina, where then Dina, yeah, she has that need for revenge because she wants to get revenge for Joel as well, but that's where it kind of stops there. Because then she gets sidelined and nothing happens after that. Like, it felt like they didn't need that there. They should have had Tommy there in the house and had it play out like the game. Because honestly, I think it would have worked in a way better way. But I will say I did like that Jackson scene, which we will be talking more about later in this video. But in the show, we did have Tommy staying behind. It makes sense why he did, because he has a responsibility to Jackson. He has a son in this. And the community is a lot different than what we saw in the game. Plus, they had just been ravaged by an attack of infected, so they needed one of their leaders to stay. He couldn't just leave and do whatever he wanted. And it makes sense. However, I feel like it could have just showed his kind of blindness from his revenge and his grief. We get a scene of him telling his son, I'll be back, I promise, and telling Maria, I have to do this. Like, just adding more from him rather than him just running off on his own and leaving a note for his wife, having him have a conversation, a scene of him giving them the explanation why he needs to go, and maybe giving us a really emotional moment. Maria saying, don't go, but him being like, no, I have to. Joel would do the same for me, or something like that, but instead we didn't get that. Instead, we had him going and talking to Gail about Ellie, and I did not like this scene. And the thing is with that too, because we had that 3 months time jump after Joel's death, it killed all the urgency. It killed everything. Like, it killed all the urgency for the revenge. It killed the need to get to them and find them before they get lost. Because, if you don't leave right away and you go 3 months later, who knows where they could end up? But if you leave right after they do, you can start following their tracks, figuring out where they go. Even though you can figure out that they were in Seattle, at least leaving right after them, you can start pinpointing where they went rather than 3 months later and then figuring it out. And I can understand to an extent why they did the 3 months time jump, mostly because of the fact that, Jackson had just been overridden by a horde. And that scene, amazing, absolutely beautiful. I love that moment because we got infected, we got action, and we got this really tragic kind of loss of community with the people who died. Like, showing the consequences of this apocalypse, the things we have to deal with, and how dangerous it could be at any living moment. Which is one of those things I enjoyed from the show, and I kind of wish we had a moment like that in the game, because imagine playing the game, and you have to stop the court from taking over Jackson. I thought that would have been a really cool moment if it was in the game. But I really like the scene. Now, if they'd still kept the Tommy leaving him right after, it could have shown him being, like, fueled by this grief and revenge. Even though he has to be there for his community, his justice for his brother means more to him after everything his brother has done for him. And I think that would have kind of showed him being blinded by his need for revenge as well, and kind of paralleled Ellie's story as they went to go take down Abby. But no, they did the 3-month time jump, killing all urgency. I'm still annoyed by that. I just think the 3-month time jump was pointless. Like, yeah, we needed to rebuild the community and all that. So if they wanted to include that story in there, maybe do it as a flashback. Maybe do that as a flashback to find out what happened to Jackson before the events of the series. And, you know, maybe add in some more key elements to show what's going on with Tommy and Joel, what's going on with Ellie and Joel, and stuff like that. Because maybe that could have added more to their characters and a cool little story point that would have added to the story as well, rather than making them wait 3 months to go to get Abby. Honestly, I can say so much about that part, but we're not going to stick on that too much because I have so much more I want to talk about. That in the game, he is as brutal as Ellie and Joel. He's going around messing up WLF soldiers left and right as he makes his way through Seattle looking for Abby and her friends. There is one scene in particular in the game that we're not getting in the show because they're already past that, is where Ellie and DINA, they find 2 WLF soldiers. One of them is Abby's friend, and Tommy had interrogated them. He had gone after them, making them write down information on the ground to make sure it matched, threatening to kill them if they didn't tell the truth. Now, of course, he kills both of them anyways because that's what he does. But Ellie and DINA stumble upon these bodies as they're going through Seattle. And it's a moment to show how brutal Tommy is and showing what he's been doing on his path to revenge. And I really wish they kept that in there because it's something that's like, okay, cool. We got another one of Abby's friends getting taken out, and it just sets up the stakes for what's really going down. Because after that scene in the game, we end up taking down another one of Abby's friends, Ellie getting caught by some of the WLF soldiers, DINA saving her, Ellie saving DINA from the guy before she's able to get stabbed, and it leads into this really cool action moment of them protecting each other as they're making their journey through this WLF zone and trying to survive as best as possible. Which is something they removed in general out of the show, is we didn't get any survival stuff. Like, we got a stalker scene, the train scene with all the infected in the subway, and that's it. We didn't have any battling with the WLF soldiers. We didn't have any battling with infected, really. We only had a couple moments, and that was it. Like, I feel like what they could have implemented and added to the story, even though I know the gameplay is something different because you can't really show them exploring everything. I get that. But having a couple confrontations with more infected throughout the entire show rather than just like 1 or 2 here and there would have really shown it being more like an apocalypse dealing with this. And I was really hoping they'd add more of that after the criticisms of season 1 not having enough of that. But I digress. Now let's jump into Abby's early focus. Because I didn't mention it earlier, but I feel like we need to add a little bit more detail here just for the Abby stuff from this season in general. Because, again, Caitlin Dever did an amazing job, and I think she deserves to be talked about in a positive light. But also can't not talk about the negative parts as well. Mostly because in the game, Abby is introduced slowly. Like, we first play as her as she's running through the snow, runs into Joel, and then that's where we finally get the reveal about who she is and why she's there. She came to kill Joel. But then we don't really get the full context to what's going on with her character until way later. Now, the show focuses on her immediately and really gives us more to her grief, which is not a terrible thing. I still don't like how they gave us the full explanation to why she was going after Joel so early. I think it would have been fantastic if we cut to her character as she was running away from the infected or showing up outside of Jackson, not explaining to us why she was there for the people who have not played the game, and then had her, blow Joel's kneecap off, and then we find out what's really going on. Like, I still like the monologue she gave when she was talking to Joel. I thought that was done amazingly. Like, Caitlin Dever's performance was fantastic. I think the only thing that most people didn't like is her calling Joel handsome. Honestly, I didn't even notice that part. I didn't really care. But I liked her whole monologue as she gave it to Joel, like the emotion on her face, like so well done. And I really liked what they did in that scene because it was fantastic. I just wish they didn't give away her motivations right away. Now, when it comes to Abby's relationship with Owen and Mel, I find with their deaths, they really over-dramatized it, mostly with pregnancy reveal and how she opened up her shirt and said, "Cut me open, get the baby out." Like, first of all, traumatizing. Absolutely traumatizing. I do kind of like the way the game played it a little bit more, mostly because when Ellie first show up, Owen and Mel are arguing about Abby being on the Scar Island. and how they need to get her and how they don't want to do it because it's a death sentence. So they're setting up all these moments in the scene with Abby's character, but they kind of took a lot of it out of it for the show. And then we lead into the scene where Ellie does kind of end up killing both of them, but in the game, she wasn't trying to do it on purpose, just like the show. It was an accident only because she was just trying to get the information out of them first. Owen tried to attack her. She shot Owen. Mel tried to attack her. Mel got stabbed. Like, the way they did it in the show, it worked to an extent, but in the game, I do like the tussle and the big reveal that she realized that Mel was pregnant there, because then that's her thinking, like, what the hell did I do? And she's traumatized by it. I mean, she's still traumatized by it in the show, like, even more. And I feel like in the show, they could have done the same way. Mostly, first of all, you had to give Ellie the map, to have the map that DINA and her made to show where Abby was so that you could leave it there for Abby to find her way back to the theater. But also, you could have had Owen try to grab Ellie's gun, not his. Ellie accidentally shoots him, and also had Mel be complicit in the fighting, because that's what she was in the game. She wasn't standing in the back. It wasn't an accidental kill. Mel was deliberately trying to kill Ellie, and that could have helped add that emotional stakes to it when Ellie ends up killing Mel. Instead of it being an accident, maybe when she stabs Mel, or shoots Mel in this case, we have Mel go, well, coughing up on blood, being like, I'm pregnant, I'm pregnant, I'm pregnant. Like, please cut the baby out. You could still save it. Because it would have added more to the deaths from the game, and it would have still added more trauma for Ellie. That also adds more trauma to Abby when she finds her friends and what happened to them. So I feel like with all that storyline, they had stuff they could have worked with, but they just didn't. And they kind of fast-tracked that scene so that we could lead into the final scene with Abby showing up, which I will say, almost done perfectly. Like, other than Ellie's lines, I feel like the Abby stuff was absolutely fantastic in that theater moment. I don't think we needed the, no, just like how the Punisher does in his series, but hey, I think everything else with Caitlin Dever, she did a fantastic job. I really like that moment, and now I can't wait to see her acting in the next season when we have her going through everything, finding Owen and Mel, and finding her dead friends, and, like, you know, how she's going to react to all this, because I feel like Caitlin is going to do the performances in an amazing way, and I think that's what's going to be, I feel like that's what's going to carry next season, and I'm looking forward to that. That's really it. I'm only looking forward to Caitlin Dever next season, so we'll see what happens. Now, let's move forward to the differences in the series, where we're going to be talking about the tonal whiplash and violence. So, first of all, the tone is very inconsistent. One minute, it's teen drama. Second moment, it's brutal violence. And it can really be shown when you watch one of those shorts on TikTok or something, where it's like the game where it's very serious, and then it's Ellie.
What? Lights. Oh, good. They have a big-ass generator down there. Natural gas, baby.
At least with those moments, like, I see those TikToks, and it just makes sense. There's all these really cheesy jokes. I feel like it's a sitcom rather than this drama, or it's like very teen angsty drama moments that aren't like this very serious R-rated show that I just don't understand what they're doing. Like, the natural gas baby line is just, it's just something that I'm just like, why? Why'd you do this? Why'd you do this? Why couldn't we have something like more serious? Like, I do get the moments where we can have a little bit of fun in there, but I feel like these kind of lines just don't work, because then in the same episode, we get them torturing Nora. So it's like, what? What's going on? And of course, I'm gonna be the dad. That was one of the worst lines ever. I know it's meant to be a joke, and I honestly don't think it fits in the show. Maybe in a show where we're actually more upbeat and everything else, not a moment where, like, we're in the middle of apocalypse, we're in the middle of a war zone, you're pregnant, I'm gonna be a dad. Like, it doesn't really work. And the thing is, the game also builds up Ellie's descent and showing us the cost of violence, showing up what this blind rage is really doing to her. It's focusing on her being this person who just wants revenge, where she is making mistakes, she is doing stuff wrong, but it's because she's blinded by her need to get the revenge is why she's doing it. It also really makes you question if you should be rooting for this character a lot of times, and it makes her more unlikable because of the terrible shit she's doing, and how she's being an ass to DINA at times, while she's also going out and trying to brutally murder some of these people. So, like, the show was just so scared of doing that, and it felt like they were really trying us not to unlike Ellie, which I think was the whole point of the game, is to make you question this moral ambiguity that questions, like, hey, should I like this character anymore? Like, she's pretty fucked up. So it's kind of disappointing that they didn't have that in the show. Like, I felt like they were scared to do that. And in the show, it feels like they skip emotional progression at some certain points, making her feel numb and not broken. Because that's what she is. She's broken in the game, and you can really see that in the characterization of her. But in the show, she acts too happy and go lucky that it doesn't feel like that character's there anymore. And it feels like Nora's death is also edited in the show for shock, rather than psychological realism. Because in the game, Ellie's deeply shaken by what she did. And in the show, she seems indifferent from it. She seems like she liked doing it. And in the game as well, when she's like having that reaction with Nora, she's giving her an out. She's like, you can die slowly or you can die quickly. But when it comes to the show, Nora's just there to info dump to Ellie why Abby's doing this and what the whole reason of the revenge plot was. So it's just like another inconsistent moment for the character to really like not really understand what's going on. Where after Ellie gets back from killing Nora, again, she's like this dull face. There's no reaction. And it's just like I needed to see that emotion a little bit more. And it was inconsistent with how she was reacting. Because we have seen her freak out, have her cry, have those terrified moments. Like we've seen Bella Ramsey do it. But then they didn't do it in certain scenes that felt that they needed it. It was just really odd specific choices that they just chose to avoid in certain situations. And the thing is, during one of the podcasts, Craig Mazin also described Ellie as fascinated by violence, misrepresenting her as a borderline psycho instead of a traumatized teen. Because that's what she is. She's traumatized. There's just things that she's doing because she's fueled by this hate. She's not necessarily going out because she likes the violence and wants to kill them. She just wants to get revenge for her father figure that got brutally killed in front of her. In the end, a lot of jumping back and forth that just didn't work out well. It didn't feel consistent, and they would just change stuff up that just kind of didn't work for the story as well, and it really bothered me while watching it. Then we have missed game moments. There's a lot of stuff they did take from the game, but there's also a lot of stuff they left out that were actually very key important moments for the game. Now, we have Seattle Day 1. It's an open map in the game. Like, you're roaming around, you get to explore everywhere. Of course, they're not going to be able to do that in the show. Completely understandable. But I feel like they could have spent a little bit more time leading into Seattle, like kind of exploring, facing some infected to show us how dangerous this journey was, rather than getting to Seattle, just kind of going to the big moment in the music store, which I think they did great, by the way. Like, that's a great moment. But I feel like they could have done a little bit more exploring, because that's where we find the bodies that Tommy tortured, where they run into one of Abby's friends and the WLF soldier, like giving us those moments of running into the other enemies and taking care of them as the story progresses and as we slowly get closer and closer and closer to Abby to show how dangerous all of this is. Also, there was not like any of the bloater fights, there was no clickers, like there was no strategy for these characters trying to work their way around. Again, not a game, understandable, but I would have liked seeing more of this. We also never saw Shamblers in this, another enemy from the game that are just horrifying. Like, we needed more infected encounters. Like, just something for them to deal with either by sneaking past them, taking a couple out, rather than just kind of teleporting from place to place. One of the things I think would have been awesome adding in is Ellie versus the bloater in the arcade. Like, that's a really cool moment from the game, and it could have shown us Ellie's survival instincts, having her be a badass, and rather than just her just going straight to the aquarium, we could have had a little bit of this here. And you know what would have helped? More episodes in the season. Like, literally, at least 2 more episodes to, like, push the story more forward and give us some of those scenes from the games that they didn't keep in, or give us more exploring, giving us more interactions with infected, like giving us more of these characters surviving in the survivalist world. There's also a scene in the game where you get attacked by WLF soldiers while you're working on a workbench. Terrifying scene if you played the game. Like, you're just kind of working, casual base area, attacked by a bunch of soldiers. You know, they could have implemented something like that, because obviously you can't put that in there because it's an interactive part of the game where you're interacting with a workbench, but you could have had Ellie go against some of the WLF soldiers by herself when she was going off on her own. Like, we could have had a cool moment like that, but instead they took out everything with Ellie doing stuff by herself and had her with everyone else. So, just like overall, I'm just disappointed that they didn't have more of that stuff in the game to show Ellie being a badass. We had the museum flashback, which was still fantastic, but it was really shortened. It would have been cool to get more of them walking around the museum, looking at the dinosaur bones, having a fun exchange with her, Ellie and Joel. Like, those are kind of moments that we could have added just to, you know, build on the relationship, have a cool, fun, wholesome moment, build on what the flashback was supposed to do. Plus, after the space shuttle part, he gives her a pin, which would have been a nice moment to include in the show to go show this memento that he gave her, and showing that adoptive father, adoptive daughter kind of relationship that they kind of had. Even though Joel wasn't really her father and he didn't act like that a lot in the game, I did like that more fatherly bond they had in the show, and I wish they kind of added more to that with those gifts and all that. Plus, at the end of that museum flashback, they end up running into other section of the museum. They find dead fireflies, and they see a firefly logo with liars written across, which is where Ellie starts to question what's been going on with the fireflies. It starts to make her realization about what Joel really did at the hospital, but instead they cut all that out and they just had literal fireflies. I would have liked the liars part more, because it kind of shows like, hey, these guys are liars, makes her start questioning, yo, did Joel lie about this? Are the fireflies really liars? Was the cure really real? And I feel like they could have added in there to make her slowly piece together what really happened at the hospital in a better way than what they did in the show. We also never got the bloater flashback with Joel and Ellie fighting a bloater inside the building. Like, that's a cool, badass scene. I would have loved to see just more infected encounters. That ends up leading into another part of the flashback where they find a couple. One was turned into a clicker while the other one was dead. because they got infected after being attacked by a horde. Thought they could survive on their own, but they couldn't after they left Jackson. And that's just like a really emotional scene of Ellie also questioning, like, hey, if there was a cure, this wouldn't have happened to them. I could have saved them. And that's where she starts to find out more about the Fireflies, where Joel says there was no cure. I feel like these moments, taking them out, really pulls away some of those payoffs later in the show, where they kind of reveal what really happened between Ellie and Joel. And it's disappointing that they didn't include that in there, or even a version of it, because they still included the sniper scene. It was in the first episode, but they still included it in some way, and I feel like we needed something like that to kind of push the story forward. And you know, I've been talking really negative for a lot of things, but trust me, I do have good things to say about the show as well, which we will talk about at the end of this video. It's just I feel like I am more disappointed than anything with this series, and that's kind of where my frustration is coming from. Even though I think most of the actors did an amazing job with what they did, I just want to say that before we get anything more at negative, because I feel like I've been very negative, but I also have liked moments, or have been moments I really like, but we will talk about those in a bit. Now, the next part we're going to be talking about is the immunity and infected failure. And because in the show, Ellie's immunity was really downplayed and replaced by her just getting bitten repeatedly. Like in the game, her immunity is something she hides and protects, and yes, she does do that in the show, but it feels more impactful in this game because there are moments where you're dealing with those spore-filled areas and having to wear a mask, and even one moment where she's like, why do I have to wear this mask? And Joel's like, well, you never know who you might run into, and we want to keep it a secret. So it's like something like that where it shows more of that her immunity, trying to hide it properly, rather than the show where they just don't really deal with it as much, other than the couple times she gets bitten. In the show, the infected are also seem more intelligent, which I think was a really cool way to add things. Like the first stalker appearance was awesome. I really like that scene and how Ellie was able to take her down. I just wish there was more to it, where we got to see more of those kind of smart infected throughout the show, rather than just with the stalkers at the start in that one scene. Like, I feel like we're missing more of that because they teased it and then we didn't see it this season. Like, I'm sure we're going to see it in the Abby season, but I feel like we needed more in this one specifically. And like in general, we barely see infected. We see the one in episode 1. Episode 2, we get the horde, which, yes, that's a lot of infected, of course. You know, there's still a lot of enemies there. Episode 3, we don't get to see any. Episode 4, we get all the subway ones, which was pretty cool. I like that moment. Episode 5, we get the stalkers. Episode 6, we don't get any. So I feel like the show really misused any of the infected. I feel like we needed definitely more. It's a zombie apocalypse show. Where are all the infected? Why aren't we getting more each episode? Or at least more interactions with them? I think that would have been way better than what they did, and I'm just generally disappointed that they didn't utilize them as well as they should have. Even though they did finally show the spores, like it took them a whole freaking season to do it, and it was cool, it was great, but I think it was too late. I feel like having the spores maybe in the beginning of the season, or maybe at the very end of season 1, could have made it so that we could have had that immunity scene with DINA feel way more impactful with the mask, because I think the game did that part way better than the show, because in the show, we had her getting bitten by the arm protecting DINA. But in the game, it's DINA trying to protect Ellie. They fall into the spores. Ellie's mask is cracked. So DINA's trying to risk her life to save the woman she loves. And I thought this was like this really amazing moment. But in the show, it's just Ellie gets bit by putting her hand in front of an infected. DINA's reaction, I think, was a lot better in the show than the game. Because she's worried about Ellie turning. She needs to kill the person she loves. Because she's like, holy shit, she's going to turn to infected now. I have to stop it so she doesn't get turned into this monster. And I think that's like really good. It was a really emotional scene. Really impactful. Absolutely fantastic. Then he goes into sexy times, which I don't really care about that part. I don't think that should have happened there, but like the whole part before that was really great. I just feel like, you know, if we had the spores and then the way DINA reacted would have been perfect together. And if you feel the same way, let me know down in the comments. If you don't, let me know why. And I feel like the show also failed to build up some of that suspense in the infected encounters, other than the first 2 episodes. Well, mainly in the stalker episode, mostly because like they're there, it's spooky, it's cool, but it felt more of like jump scares. That's really it. Because then they just kind of jump on Ellie, and that's really it. Like, there were cool, spooky moments, but I feel like Ellie should have been able to take care of it, having that suspense of her outmaneuvering them, maybe, like, trying to dodge them, taking them out, like, being a badass. Like, some people are like, oh, we're more realistic. Like, yeah, but realistic, we're just showing Ellie be weak. Like, I want to see her be a badass. I don't care if she's, like, this, all of a sudden, a superhero. I think that would have been cool, like, having her be a badass, like, dodging stuff. Like, that's what I wanted to see, because that's who she is. But definitely misuse of the infected, and we definitely needed more. We're already a big chunk into this video, so if you're enjoying it, make sure to hit a like and subscribe button. It helps out the channel a lot, and you get to stay up to date with all my Marvel DC breakdowns. Now, the next part we're going to be talking about is how the cast was misused. First of all, we're going to be talking about Jesse, because he felt underdeveloped in certain situations and was just randomly inserted. Like, and he acts out of character at times. Mostly because in the beginning, he's a chill dude, like the game, he's a nice guy, good friend. I really like the moments he had with Ellie. But then when he got randomly inserted into the soccer scene, it felt so out of place. Like in the game, Ellie runs into him as she's working her way through the WLF soldiers and trying to avoid them, and she stumbles upon them after he left Jackson to go find them. Tommy, Ellie, and Dina are already all gone, and he goes after them to help his friends. That's his whole goal, is to help his friends with their goal. And yes, he does technically just appear in that as well, but it feels more natural because he's hearing commotion, he's wondering what's going on as he's exploring Seattle trying to find them. However, in the show, he explains it as he found Shimmer, and then he tracked them all the way to the theater, found the map, and then found them where they were going. But even though it's not like perfect, he just magically appears there, and it feels like just too convenient. It's like, it's a show convenient, it's a convenient plot point, like, poof, he's there, this is how we got there, easy peasy. And I feel like it should have been harder than that. I, again, don't like him being that savior in that moment. I think Ellie should have been the savior, and then Jesse came in maybe after that, and they ran into him, but like, I just don't like how they randomly inserted him there. And I know a lot of people feel the same way, so at least I know I'm not alone on this one. But in the last couple episodes, they really made him feel more like an asshole. Like, I will say, when he reacted to Dina being pregnant, as he's a father, he has to survive, I thought that was fantastic. It added more to his character than we saw in the game, because in the game, he didn't react like that at all. He just knew that he couldn't go back to Jackson with Dina because Dina wouldn't let him. Dina would not leave without Ellie. So I like how they added more to that there. However, I did not like how he talked down to Ellie. The fact that he voted no to go to Seattle in the Jackson community, the fact that he tells Ellie she only cares about himself, like, I don't like those moments. I do like the moment with Ellie saying, fuck the community. Like, I thought that was fantastic. Like, she has her goal. It's what it is. It's going to take down Abby for what she did to Joel. And I love that. But with Jesse talking down to her, it feels so out of character. Because this man in the game said, if you asked, I would come with you. He wanted to help his friends. He wanted to be there for them. But in this, he wasn't like that. He was caring more about the community than anything else. And it was out of character for him. And it was kind of disappointing. Even though he finally does get to the point at the end of the episode of the final, I know you would go to hell and back to save me. I do like that moment. I think it adds a little bit more than what the game did, but I also like the game because he's like, my friends' problems are my problems. I feel like they could have implemented that in the last scene to really make his character feel like his game character, because of course then he gets blasted by Abby, so it doesn't really matter after that. But just don't like what they did with certain parts of him, even though I think the actor Young did a fantastic job, like absolutely great job in those final episodes. I just don't like some of the lines that they gave him. Now, like I said before, Mel and Owen's deaths really lacked the emotional spiral that they had in the game. Mostly because in the game, it was devastating. Like, first of all, Ellie shows up because she doesn't want to kill them. She doesn't want to kill them. She's been traumatized by Nora's death and what she did, so she just wants to find out where Abby is so she can kill her and the others can go on their way. But then Owen, like the dumbass he is, tries to grab her gun, has a tussle with her, she shoots him. Mel is also a complicit attacker in this, tries to kill Ellie, and then Ellie grabs the knife and goes back into her, like in this really big moment of like, these guys could have lived. They made their decisions to attack Ellie, and the consequences with them dying. And then Ellie finding out Mel was pregnant. Like, she was traumatized by that, because she is just imagining, what if that was Dina? That could have happened to Dina. And she's scared because of it. However, the show had a way more devastating way of killing Mel, only because of her ripping off her jacket and being like, cut me open, you can still save the baby. Like, that's traumatizing. It is a horrible way to die, and I think that was a really interesting way to do this scene. However, they made Mel seem less complicit in everything, because in the game, she's complicit. She's there. She's attacking her. But Mel in this, they make her seem more innocent. I don't know why. I feel like they're trying to, maybe have sympathy for her, but at the same time, she made her decisions in the game, and I like that more because it shows that she chose the wrong decision. It's her fault. She did it. And it wasn't just an accident that she died. Now, the Seraphites, when it came to them, I think they were introduced too early with Ellie and Dina finding them. They were trying to make them seem like more sympathetic because the wolves were these monsters that killed the children and the adults. But then we slowly get to see what the Seraphites really are. We see the terrible things they've done by cutting people open. I do think they could have waited until we got into the Seattle to kind of show into that. Like, showing them be those monsters, what they did, kind of make it more ambiguous. Like, we don't know who they are until we see it happen. It also just shows that both the WLF and the Seraphites they're terrible. They're both terrible. And I think the game shows them both as being monsters, and I think they could have done more of that, because when we get the Abby storyline, we'll see the human side of the WLF. And maybe they'll try to humanize the Seraphites a little bit more, but I feel like they didn't need to put as much of it in the season as they did. They could have just teased it with like scenes that involved Ellie in it, rather than just kind of giving us stuff right there. And then we had Seth, Gale, and the other council members. Like, I feel like I did like some of the council stuff because it adds more to the Jackson community. It gives us more detail to them than we never really got in the game. However, the whole council meeting that we got was so, like, repetitive. Like, I feel like it was so long that it didn't need to be long. And I feel like Seth in the game was good. He was an asshole to Ellie. He got what he deserved. He apologized to her. That's it. That's all we needed to of him. But in the show, they really pushed his character. First of all, he stands up for Ellie. Then they should go after Abby and them. Then he helps Ellie and DINA escape. Like, to an extent, I did kind of enjoy that because it shows him making up for his mistakes and wanting to be better. But they also focused on him, like, way too much. I don't think they needed to show him as much as they did. And, like, with the Gale stuff, I definitely think, like I said before at the start, her first scene with Joel was great. I think that was a great one. And then the scene with Gale in the flashback was also great with her reacting to Eugene's death. Thought that was great. But the Tommy stuff and the stuff with Ellie in episode 3 was just not needed, and I feel like they just didn't need to put that in there. And one of the things I feel like they really misused in this was the pregnancy scene. Like in the game, Ellie sees DINA as a burden. Like she is now a liability. She can get killed. She has to worry about 2 lives now, and it really kind of stresses Ellie out. And it shows in her reaction to DINA where she's not supportive right away. She's just angry. And it's because she's blinded by the anger and the hate. She's in a war zone. She only has a path for death. Now that DINA's here with pregnant, she has to worry about another factor. And it's conflicting news for her. But in the show, it adds more like, I'm going to be a dad. It's like this really happy moment rather than being something like, oh shit, what are we going to do now? You're a liability. We can't put you at risk. And I really think they messed up that reveal to an extent. Now we're going to be moving on to the podcast confirming some of the problems, which is Craig Mazin talking about stuff that he clearly didn't understand the character for. Mostly because we first have Craig Mazin, he didn't want to use Future Days, the song that Joel plays for Ellie, and the song that Ellie plays in The Last of Us. It's like an emotional cornerstone for her grief because, you know, you see Joel playing it for her. It's like something that he made this guitar for her, and he plays Future Days. So when we see Ellie playing Future Days in the theater, it's like this really emotional impact. She's remembering a moment with Joel, and it's like this really nice one where he wanted to take it out because he thought it was some random song, which is just like, why? What is wrong with you? Why would you do that? And then we also have him talking about how Ellie is a violent child, ignoring all her emotional intelligence and depth. The character who's been traumatized since birth and just saying she's a violent child. Like, that's not who she is. Yeah, she does violent stuff, but that's not what defines your character. One of the problems, too, is that Bella Ramsey's performance is hurt by the writing. Like, they did a great job in certain moments. Like, they could show that emotion. They could show that anger. But then in others, they just took it all out. And I feel like the writing was just super inconsistent with this season. Craig Mazin also saw Ellie as psychotic. Rather than someone who's trying to live up to what she thinks Joel would want her to be, someone who's trying to do the best she can and also just get revenge for what happened. Like, you could see Ellie as psychotic in certain ways because of what she's done, yeah. But I feel like that's what they focused on in this show. Mostly because, like, even when Nora gets, after she kills Nora, she's like, it was easy. No, it wasn't. It wasn't easy. It was rough. Yes, you were beating the crap out of her, but like you're supposed to be traumatized by it rather than like it was easy. I liked it. So I think the main things is just Craig Mazin not understanding the character of Ellie and just not understanding what he's working on. Or at least trying to write a completely different character with using the Ellie character. Now I got the next part of this video, which is going to be talking about the show versus game critiques. And I'm only going to talk about a handful of scenes because I did talk more specifically them in each episode. So if you want to go see that, I'll have the playlist linked in the description. And I'll have the playlist linked at the end of the video so that you can go watch the different episodes and go over the scenes scene by scene. But in this, we're just going to go over some of the main ones and, you know, how they changed it from the game. Now, first of all, we got the subway, immunity, and pregnancy scene. I put that kind of all together just because of, you know, it all led into each other in the same episode. Like in the show, we have Ellie and DINA taking out those couple wolves, getting out the window, and running into the subway. Very similar to the game where you're trying to get out of there and you're running into the subway to avoid them. Except in this game, you run into clickers. It's a spore-filled area, and it's showing the infected already being around, and you have to avoid them or kill them to get away. And I like that part of the game because there's something you could have easily added into the show, had them dealing with the infected, trying to get around them, maybe taking out a clicker, at least one, and working their way to avoid the wolf soldiers as they're trying to get out of the subway, and you make it out of there. However, I will say, the infected part of the subway scene in the show was fantastic. Like, just seeing the amount of them come after them was awesome. Just showing the horror of these infected was great. And I think that's what the show did really good in this moment, was showing that mass amount infected to make it seem more terrifying and try to get away. Great. I just wish they had the Ellie and DINA dealing with a couple infected before that horde came in, just to give us a cool moment of them trying to survive and sneak their way out of there. And in the game, while they're escaping as well, we do have the moment of when Ellie gets her mask broken. They fall through the floor, Ellie's mask cracks, and DINA turns around and tries to give her hers, which again, like I said before, I think is a really good moment. It's Ellie telling about her immunity, like saying I'm immune, saving DINA's life, but also showing what DINA's willing to risk for Ellie. And I think it's a great, great moment. But then it leads into them surviving. However, I think the reveal of the immunity to DINA was done better in the show because of her reacting to it. DINA being scared because she has to kill the woman she loves because she doesn't want her to be infected. And I like that moment more, but I like the mask reveal more rather than her getting bit in the arm. So it's like, I love the two scenes. I'll put them together and we can have something great. And when the scene where Ellie does get bit by protecting DINA plays out differently in the game, because that same scene happens, but it's Ellie getting grabbed by a clicker and DINA shooting the infected, saving Ellie. So I like that moment from the game because it's showing, you know, Ellie getting DINA out of there, putting herself at risk, and DINA saving her, working together, rather than Ellie just shoving her arm in front, getting bitten, and then getting DINA out of there. Like, little complaints for that part. I don't think they're as big of a deal, but I don't know. Some stuff bothered me, and I just wish we saw more of those game elements in there to kind of fuse the story together, because there's stuff the show did good that fixed some of the stuff the game did, but then took out the game stuff that did good and then made it worse in the show. So I feel like if they took a mix of the two and put them together, it would be a lot better. And then we get the pregnancy reveal, which I think the game did way, way better. Like, I think Ellie being mad about it at first, seeing her as a liability, seeing her as a burden, is a way more appropriate response than what she did in the show, because in the game, it's more of this traumatic thing. She's like, well, shit, I don't want her to die. I don't want her to lose her kid. Like, I have to deal with this now. I'm on a path of death. Like, how are we going to deal with this now? I'm scared of losing DINA. And in the show, it's like, I'm going to be a dad. I don't think her being happy about DINA being pregnant is a good thing. I think she should be angry. She should be worried. And they don't really show that, except for like later after they run into the bodies with the dead Seraphites, where Ellie starts to realize, shit, why did I bring you? Why did I bring you here? But I feel like there should have been more of a, in that moment, rather than her being blinded by love and being like, oh, happy about it. I think she should have had the realization after they just survived being attacked by infected. Then we got the Nora hospital scene. My biggest problem with this one was the fact they just teleported into the hospital. I really think that they should have had her sneak her way in like she does in the game. Give us a couple moments of her, you know, she doesn't necessarily have to kill wolf soldiers. Sneak her way in, avoiding them. Like, give us a little bit more rather than just, boom, I'm next to Nora. Because in the game, when you first sneak in, you come through the water, you run into a girl playing PSP, and that's a cool little moment because it shows Ellie, like, getting the information out of her, and then also her killing her because the girl tries to get at Ellie, and she's like, shit. Because she didn't want to kill that girl. She just had to because she acted. And I feel like it's just showing more of that remorse that she has, where she's not necessarily going to kill everyone. She's just going after Abby and her friend. It's just leading to more what Ellie's goal is. And, like, you know, she's not a complete monster, but she does act when she needs to. I am glad, though, that the Nora scene played out pretty much like the game. You know, having her go up to her, Ellie trying to figure out where Abby is, Nora not wanting to answer her, Nora saying that Joel deserved it, and then them doing the chase scene, which I thought was great. I like the game more, though, where they jump into the spore-filled area so that Ellie can take out Nora, and I thought that would have been really cool if they added it in there, especially because the spores were in the basement. The way they explained in the show is that the basement was sealed off because of the spores, and that they couldn't leak in. So it's understandable, the change they made, and I do love that they finally added those spores in this moment, and the scene with them down there in the spore area was really cool, except I just wish there was a little bit more to it. Interrogation scene with Nora was done almost scene for scene. They did a little bit too much explaining, once again, something I'm not a big fan of them just explaining everything, especially with Nora telling Ellie about Abby's dad. Like, that's not something that happens in the game. I don't think it's information we needed to give her right there and then. And I do wish the one thing we got was Ellie turning around and being like, I can kill you fast so you die, or it can be slow. Like, a really cool moment to show how cold-hearted she is. Like, she's serious. She's ready to take down Nora. And I thought that would have been a really cool moment if they just kept that in there. But instead, they didn't. And they just had Nora over-explaining everything. But we did have Ellie beating her with the pipe, which I thought was great. Now we got the museum flashback. I already talked about most of this before, so we'll just kind of quickly go over this one. I just really liked how they kept the whole space part almost scene for scene, except for not having the pin, because it was a really good scene to show them bonding together, Joel doing something for Ellie for her birthday, and really putting them together overall. Just a really nice moment. I love that they kept the tape and them being in the space shuttle, pretending to go into space, like a really good moment, and I think they did a great job with that part of the episode. Again, the only thing I wish they had was the dinosaur interacting part, but that's also because I love dinosaurs, so I wish they had that in there just to have some fun with it. Then we also have the Ellie finding out about the fireflies part of the flashbacks, where in the show, she's able to put it together because of Joel lying to her and seeing that he was able to straight-face lie to Gail about Eugene. Really shows her what kind of person Joel is, and knowing that he hasn't been telling her the total truth too. I thought it was an interesting way to kind of have her figure out what was going on with the fireflies beforehand, but I do like the game where it's more of like a slow progression over a couple flashbacks to really understand. Like the first one with the couple thinking about how if there was a cure, they wouldn't have ended up like the way they did, and Joel telling her that there was no cure, making her start to really think what's been going on with the fireflies. Then having the moment where Ellie running off to go back to the hospital, finding a tape about what happened at the hospital and how Joel came in and killed them all. Having her finally realize what happened, get Joel to admit it to her face. Like having this really big reveal about what really went down. I thought it would have been cool to have those little pieces in there to slowly lead us into that. And that could have led us into the final part of that episode where we got the porch scene. Instead, we got all that information in the porch scene, which wasn't bad. I won't say it was bad. I really enjoyed the porch scene. Pedro Pascal and frickin' Bella Ramsey did amazing. Like, it was amazing acting through and through. You could feel that emotion and you could feel everything in that scene, which was done great. I loved it. And even though they put kind of all those flashback stuff together, the performance overall was amazing, and I really liked what they did there. It was just made it even more devastating, where you found out that they were going to try to make things better between each other, but instead, the next day, Joel gets killed, and it's devastating. It adds way more impact to the death. Now, in the game, you don't find out most of this until the very end of the game. But for pacing issues and it being a video game and you could play it within a week, it does make sense that we did this in a show to give us more information sooner, because otherwise we're not seeing it for like frickin' three-ish years or something, depending on how long it takes them to make the next season, and most likely a season 4. Then we have the aquarium scene we got to talk about, where I did love that we had Ellie at least sneaking into the aquarium. Great moment to really show us her doing that. I mean, I'm glad that they didn't kill Alice the dog. That's one thing I'm glad that they changed from the game, because I didn't want to do that in the first place in the game, so I'm glad they took it out. When Ellie shows up to Mel and Owen, they are arguing about Abby. They're having that fight between what they should do with Abby being on the Scar Island, which they do have a little bit here, but not a lot. And the show really fast-tracked the scene. I still think it was better in the game. I'm going to stand by that. And we already talked about it a bunch, so I won't go too much into detail because we already covered it earlier. But I still think that they should have at least had Ellie have the map, because then it would have led into the Abby theater scene a lot better than what it did in the show, because they don't explain how she got there whatsoever, which, you know, we will see inside the Abby season. We will know how she got there. But in the game, at least they kind of directed to the map to make you understand that Ellie dropped the map there, and that's how she found them. Which, speaking of that, let's talk about that Abby scene, because I thought that was fantastic. It was almost shot for shot, almost perfect, except for Ellie being like, I didn't mean to kill your friends, as she bashes Nora with the goddamn pipe. Like, she doesn't mean to kill her friends is bullshit. In the game, she's like, I'm gonna kill them all. Like, she is ready to kill her friends. Like, it's just so crazy to me that they're making Ellie be like, I only wanted to kill you. I didn't want to kill anyone else, which is not what she wanted to do. They were all participants in Joel's death, and she wanted to take them all out. Even though after Nora's death, she was traumatized and was more hesitant to kill them after that, she still originally wanted to kill them. So it is weird that, you know, they kind of added that line in there, and I still think it's funny. I keep seeing clips where it's like Abby going to shoot Ellie. She's like, no, 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 no. I think it's hilarious now. Every time I see those clips, I kind of laugh now because they're just kind of funny. But Caitlin Dever in this did an absolutely amazing job. Like, I let you live, and you wasted it. Like, such a good line, and she did such a good job doing that. I think this scene is one of the top moments from this entire season. Also, it's devastating because Jesse gets blasted, which, whew, that's a rough one. I can't wait to see how they show the other POV when we get to the final end of the next season. But, you know, after we talked about all that, it wasn't all bad. It wasn't a terrible season by any means. I think it wasn't good, but it wasn't terrible. I feel like it's in the middle where it's like, man, it's okay. I feel like they could have made it better. There were moments I could have fixed to make it even better than it was. It didn't stand out to me of like beautiful TV, but there were specific moments in each episode that I thought were done fantastically. Episode 1, the dance scene, I loved it. I loved the moments they gave for us. Episode 2 with Joel's scene, absolutely fantastic. Like the death with Abby, great, great, great moment. And it was almost perfectly game accurate, but added more to the story, which I thought was done really well. Like having Abby's speech, having Ellie find out, showing that emotional moment, showing the acting come out. Great moments overall. Episode 3 is the only one I might not have a really great moment that came out of it, other than the grave scene with Ellie. Like, I thought that was a good moment, showing that emotion and just, you know, having that touching scene with the characters. Episode 4 with the subway scene. Episode 5 with Nora's death. Episode 6 with the whole museum scene and the final porch scene. And then episode 7 was the Abby scene at the very end. Those were the moments that really stood up for me and the moments I really liked from the season. So, like, I think almost every episode other than 3 had these moments I really enjoyed. Also, episode 2, the freaking horde attacking the town. That was also amazing. But, like, other things I think the season did well was, like, at the very start, building on Joel and DINA's relationship, giving them a little bit more time together. I like that first scene when we see them together. I thought that was a really nice moment. All of Caitlin Dever's performances as Abby were fantastic, no matter which episode she was in. Beautiful. Wish we saw more of her. Can't wait for next season, only because of her. Like I said, the subway scene was amazing, and the amount infected was just really cool to see. The stalker scene at the start, when they were getting attacked in the warehouse, was great. I just didn't like the fact that Ellie was just getting jumped on and bitten. I didn't like that part, but everything else was really spooky and terrifying, and I liked it. They didn't kill Shimmer or Alice. Those are the two good things. The dog survived and Shimmer survived. She's just chilling in the music store eating. Glad they clarified that, because her death in the game was very disappointing, and I was very upset when that happened, so I'm glad that she survived. Like I said before, I feel like they didn't need to necessarily give us more information on the scars and the wolves, but I will say that some of the stuff was done well, like giving us more info on Dixon and him torturing the scar, but what's going on was a cool scene, like just setting them up to an extent. I just feel like they might have given us a little bit too much of them, especially the scene with Ellie getting onto the island for like half a second and then leaving. Pointless scene. I think they could have just showed the explosion in the background like they did while she was on the boat, rather than just us going to the island for no reason and then leaving. I digress about that part. Also adding more backstory to Ellie and Joel with their flashbacks I thought was really cool. Giving us the flashback of Joel actually making that guitar was really awesome, and I like seeing that. Seeing Ellie with Kat and getting her tattoo was a cool little detail they added, just something we never really got in the game. And I like that they added some of that more stuff. The Eugene stuff was really cool. Like, I didn't like how it made Joel seem more like a bloodthirsty monster, but I did really like how it added into some of these emotional payoffs afterwards, with Ellie saying that he's a liar, like realizing what he's been doing, and I thought it was done really well. And then adding more to Jesse's character was also really cool by giving us that backstory about him falling in love with the girl but stayed because of the community. Like, it just gave more to his character than we really got in the game, and I liked that part as well. So there are stuff I liked. Also, the cinematography was pretty awesome through the entire thing. The music was fantastic. The acting overall was pretty decent, and it's just the only thing that hurt the show really was the writing choices for a lot of scenes. It's just one of those things where it's like, it's not all bad, there are good things, it's just really hurt by its writing. And I feel like at the end of the day, season 2 of The Last of Us had everything they needed to succeed. Passionate fan base, an iconic source material, talented cast, and it still fumbled the ball. The game was about grief, revenge, and growth, but the show was about justifying the decisions that stripped away the emotion from every single one of the themes. Mostly because they kept kind of pushing out that Abby was justified in what she's doing, which technically she kind of is, but they kind of just kept forcing that to be like, Abby's not the bad guy. And then also justifying the Seraphites for going after the wolves because they kill the women and children, and then like the wolves going after the Seraphites because they do the same thing. So it's like, pick a side. They're both monsters. Of course, if they don't course correct for in season 3, which they can't really do for Ellie's story, but if they can make Abby's story better, they could definitely help the season be better in the long run. If they take some of our complaints, make the season cooler, because I don't think we'll see Ellie whatsoever next season. It'll only be Abby. So I'm interested in seeing what they do. Because then if they course correct for season 3, if they're doing a season 4 for the wrap-up with Ellie and Abby, they could fix Ellie's story in there as well. Like I said before, if you want to see more detailed parts about each episode and the themes that went on and all that, make sure you check out the playlist I have in the description below, and I'll also have it at the end of the video just so you can click on it. Each episode is titled, and you can just go to the scenes if you want to see us break down what they did in the game versus what they did in the show. But let me know your thoughts on this season. What did you think they did right? What did you think they did wrong? Try to not talk about the casting choices, because that's something I'm not too worried about. I think it's more of a writing decision than a casting problem. And yeah, let me know what you think. Let's try not to be too mean. Let's try to go back and forth with their critiquing and what's good. Like, let's not only focus on the negative. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Helps out the channel a lot, and you get to stay up to date with all my videos for Marvel, DC, other adaptations, and anime. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you later when it's time to break down something else.